Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
When is a time when you experienced unexpected mercy or grace? Hey, it's Jen. Welcome back to the Bible for Busy People. We have been talking this week about the Beatitudes, about how these are statements from Jesus about how fortunate and blessed we are when we recognize these spiritual realities, how they are countercultural and they're really gifts from God. They're really ways that God allows us to see the truth of our spiritual state before Him. And so we've already talked about being poor in spirit, about being meek, about mourning, and about being hungry and thirsty for righteousness. And today we are talking about being merciful. Now, I know for me, I am the kind of person who is more apologetic than I need to be. I am constantly saying I'm sorry. It's to the point that my toddler says I'm sorry all the time. Actually, I sorry. Even though, it doesn't necessarily need to be said, especially when you're a toddler and it's really not your fault. But there have been times when I have said I'm sorry and it has been truly appropriate. Times when I broke my word, when I didn't respect someone's time by being where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be, when I unfairly reacted in an angry way. I've had to apologize to my kids a number of times. When I've hurt people, even if I didn't mean to. And it's always such a comfort when people respond with just unexpected, unmerited grace. In Matthew 5, verse 7, it says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Oxford Languages defines mercy as compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. And one reference that I read shared that the Romans despised mercy. To them, it was a sign of weakness. And we've already talked about how the Romans were powerful. They were oppressive. They wanted to remain in control. Also, the other powerful group of the day were the Pharisees. And they weren't merciful because they felt that if you did something wrong, you were being cursed by God, so you deserved it. Ouch. These were the prevalent thinkings or the prevalent perspectives of the day. But Jesus, again, was being countercultural here. And think about it. What does our society tell us? I would say we lean more towards entitlement, towards the feeling of, well, I'm allowed to be mad. They deserve whatever the consequence is. I think we live in a society where we demand justice when we've been wronged and mercy when we've been wronged. But when it comes to other people, we can be more hesitant. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. But I think as a whole, in society, we can be hesitant to show mercy, but we can want it when it applies to us. Now, deciding to be merciful is not really about us. It's all about knowing that you've received mercy and being generous with it in the way that it was given generously to you. I mean, come on, if there's anybody who has the power to punish or harm us, it would absolutely be God. And yet it is in God's nature to be merciful and loving. It is in God's nature to be compassionate and to show forgiveness. And that is the example that we've been given so that we can give to other people. Now, again, showing mercy often involves someone who is in a worse situation than you. And that made me think about Luke 10. In verse 25, it says, "On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. 'Teacher,' he asked, 'what must I do to inherit eternal life?' 'What is written in the law?' he replied. 'How do you read it?'" Jesus liked to ask questions. He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? Again, Jesus liked to ask questions. The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." In this parable, we all receive a lesson in incomprehensible mercy. Not only was the Good Samaritan the least likely person to help the Jew out of all 3 people that had been named, but he went above and beyond to care for him. He had him ride on his own donkey. He took him to an inn. He paid for his expenses. He dressed his wounds. Above and beyond. Our mercy ought not to just be reluctantly given, but lavishly, and possibly with no expectation of return. Because that's the same way we are loved by God, whom we can never fully repay. Yes, it's hard, it's tricky. Of course, there are going to be some people who abuse mercy, and sometimes boundaries are necessary. Discernment is key. But this isn't something that we're doing on the defensive. We are looking for ways to show mercy. We're looking for ways to offer mercy, just the way that God has offered mercy to us. So maybe if that's our perspective, that will give us more opportunities to be merciful, and that could never be a bad thing. In what ways can we show mercy? Can we freely give to someone in need? Can we forgive without holding it over someone's head? That's going to be a challenge that I'm going to keep with me after reading this passage and after thinking about that beatitude about showing mercy. I pray that we can come from the perspective of being shown mercy so that we can show it to other people as much as possible, as lavishly as possible. Thank you so much for these conversations this week. Again, I really felt strongly that the Beatitudes was something that I needed to study out as I'm going through my own difficult wrestling season with God. I really needed to be reminded that even though we can be sad, we can mourn, we can feel like we're poor in spirit, those are blessed and fortunate places to be. I hope you leave encouraged, and we'll be talking more about this next week.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.